Hi, everyone. My name is Coach Pete. I am from Blueprint 120, just north of New York City in what's known as Westchester County, or Tuckahoe, to be specific, New York. Our facility was just coming up on 1 year old. And one of the first pieces of equipment that we got was the LiveO2. So just happy to be here with you, Mark.
And what's the focus of your facility? What services do you provide?
Yeah, anti-aging and longevity medicine, as it mainly pertains to men's health. We do women's hormones as well. But my good friend and partner, Dr. Angelo Bocciolari, is the medical director, and he does quite extensive lab work, again, as it pertains to men's health, wellness, anti-aging medicine. So people come in, start with to see Doc first, do this extensive lab work with him, and then once those labs come back and they've gone through a follow-up with him, we set them off on their next step, so to speak, which would be their exercise journey. And then, of course, that's where the LiveO2 comes into play in one of our longevity type protocols. This coming June will be 33 years for me as a coach. In the health, wellness, fitness, athletic world. When I myself hit 50 a number of years ago, I started to I still compete in sports at 50, I'm now 55. I still compete in sports and wanted to continue to compete in sports. I saw Peter Attia, for one example, speaking about the centenarian Olympics. And I was like, oh, sign me up for that. And so I'd gone out to Upgrade Labs in Santa Monica, California, to visit there. And that was the first place that I had gotten a chance to use the LiveO2 and experience LiveO2. And as an athlete myself, I mean, I was hooked just for myself. And Doc and I were starting to put this facility together. So I came back to him and said, we got to get one of these things for our clients and patients as well. And so, yeah, that Upgrade Labs was my first experience with it. I got hooked, immediately on my first ride.
Got it. So what specific health or fitness goals were you hoping to achieve with LiveO2? And next question will be, well, you had goals, how were you able to realize them?
Yeah. So for me in particular, and then I'll tell you some stories with our clients' success stories. For me in particular, it was all about driving athletic performance VO2 max. And so Annette Young, who's wonderful on your team and on your staff, sort of coached me in the beginning with the protocols and to do the whole body flush, and went through all the different protocols with her. And started to really notice, I'd say, improvements in my sports performance in terms of conditioning pretty rapidly, and I was at that time competing in one of the Spartan events, so needed a large lung capacity, to put in layman's terms. And there's no question that the hypoxic training helped. The intermittent hypoxia certainly helped me with my athletic goals. And then here in the facility, as another athletic example, we have a number of MMA fighters that come in that are both amateur and pro. And they're having, I should say, great success in terms of their conditioning for the fight game. So it's really driven sports performance in terms of an improvement in conditioning, meaning obviously an improvement in VO2 max. But we've had also the exact opposite of that, and the exact opposite population. One simple example is a 75-year-old female diagnosed with dementia, and we used the LiveO2. I love to tell this story. It was so successful for her that after a few months, the husband I put them back in touch with you guys because they loved it so much that they actually bought a LiveO2 for their home. It was so good for her brain that so we lost them as a client. It's kind of funny. You don't want to lose anybody as a client. We were so happy that it helped her brain and it was so successful for them that they actually bought one for their house. So that was pretty cool. So we've had everything from sports performance, on one end of the spectrum, all the way to, an elderly dementia patient on the other, that have seen benefits from LiveO2.
Have you, when you talk about VO2 max, do you guys have the facility to test or do differential VO2 max tests?
Yeah, great question. No, not yet. That's something that we have to add, and we're talking about it, but not quite. No, not at the moment anyway.
Well, just for anybody wondering, we did one of these tests some number of years ago, and within the first week, I think we saw between a 7 and 9% improvement in VO2 max. I think it was week number 5, 6, 7. There was like a 17%. And when we concluded the experiment at week number 11, that we had an improvement of 29%.
I
So,
believe it. Yeah. And if you ever do anything like that again, Mark, I'd certainly like to be involved with you. We have the population here to test, so that's maybe something we could think about working on again in the future. I'd love to collect that data.
Okay, so I think the thing to convey to the audience is, will LiveO2 help my VO2 max performance? And the answer there is yes. Okay, so from a subjective validation point of view, I offered some quantitative numbers, which are, 9%, 18%, and 29%, which is what we've seen. Does your experience align with those numbers with both yourself and your clientele?
Oh, yeah, no question. And so because we can't test the actual VO2 max at this second, I know that we're getting those types of numbers by keeping good records of the number of watts that they can pedal at when first going hypoxic, as an example, right? And in the very beginning, recording those numbers, and then over time or over the number of sessions, the number of watts that someone can pedal at while hypoxic is going up. So they're able to produce very little power in the beginning, let's say, as they're getting acclimated to it. And as their bodies are adjusting to the hypoxia, they're pedaling at watts that are higher than they were first able to while receiving oxygen, if that makes sense. So they're hypoxic now, but down the line, they're producing more watts hypoxic than they were able to while receiving oxygen in the beginning. So that was one of the telltale signs.
Well, that's a quantitative validation that, for example, when people train on LiveO2, they become able to produce more energy because the energy production processes are optimized by LiveO2. So normally, how long does it take for you to observe an improvement or an increase in their total energy or output capacity?
I say it is relative, of course, to two things in the beginning. I've noticed age being one, and then fitness level. So when the more fit people start, there's really a rapid within a half a dozen sessions or less. So for example, I have a very high level 35-year-old female CrossFitter, another 34, 35-year-old male who is a elite men's Spartan racer. These people respond immediately, like they're just taken off. And then, have some people that are a little bit slower to respond because their fitness level wasn't so, high to begin with. And in that population, it's taken, I'd say probably around 8 to 10 rides before they're really starting to notice. When I say ride, I'm using a stationary bike to do this on. So it's taken them about 8 to 10 rides, whereas the other population, like the fit population, it's almost immediate. It's under 6, and they'll go and do their practice rounds, or actually go and do a race and come back and say they just felt like it was amazing. It just took off, and their times are lower. Their work, especially in CrossFit, everything being work capacity, work divided by time, you're able to do more work in the same amount of time. Their scores are better. So there was really a rapid improvement with these kind of high level athletes.
How many LiveO2 training sessions do I need to perform before I see an improvement in my performance? And the answer there, according to you, like for the athletes, somewhere in the ballpark of 6 or less.
Or less,
That's still a very small number.
Very
Okay,
small
and
number,
then and then for your deconditioned people that are on health recovery initiatives, your answer there is 10 or less in terms of seeing response. So 2 to 3 weeks or 1 to 3 weeks in terms of, a functional improvement in metabolism and energy production is an excellent result. Approximately, like from an athletic training point of view, for a big percentage of the athletes that we train prior to competition, and I'm talking up to the moment before they walk on the field, somewhere between 30 and 50% will come back to us and say that performance was a personal best.
Yep.
So big percentages of the people that prepare for their competition with LiveO2 will come back. And so the physiological shifts that happen by the reset of just preparing them to compete will come back and, report, personal best or personal record as a result of the optimizations that occurred as a result of their, their single preparatory engagement.
Absolutely.
Okay. Have you seen anything that supports or, contradicts that observation?
Contradicts it? No, not at all. Supports it? Yeah. I mean, those are pretty much, I would say that's the feedback that we're getting from these high level athletes and from the Gen Pop as well. The Gen Pop people, I have a 66-year-old retired MD who's been using it now consistently around that 10 to 12 workout mark. And just his energy level to play golf and do his things in retirement. He cannot say enough about the increased mental clarity and energy that he feels as a result of using the LiveO2.
I want to visit on one more thing in terms of the athletic dimension. What are your observations regarding recovery time of your athletes, before they had access to LiveO2 versus after?
Way down, especially with the MMA guys. The workouts obviously are pretty grueling. They're doing a number of different things, from obviously the combat training itself to lifting weights to doing other types of GPP, general physical conditioning stuff, just to be in great shape, and then are using this. And what they've come back to say is that not only do they feel better in the ring, but exactly as you just allured to, is that their recovery time between their training sessions is reduced. And when they return to training, the energy level that they're able to bring is much higher than it was before. So that in particular has been one population of high-level athlete that has given us really the greatest feedback is the MMA bunch, who is using this to, again, drive their lung capacity, drive their sports performance. To put it in layman's terms, is simply so that they don't get tired in the ring. It's 3 5-minute rounds for them, and it's obviously quite grueling. They have reported, again, that they're able to recover faster from their training sessions and then get back to training, and when doing so, have a higher level of energy to them than they previously did when they were not using LiveO2. And so as a result of that, I mean, for business, we're just getting more and more. They've just been coming in because the word spreads. So it's been fantastic.
Well, from a population point of view, the MMA people are, they've got a couple of real challenges. Yes, there's the recovery in the ring, there's the endurance in the ring, but the other thing is a lot of those guys get hit in the head more than they should. So have any of them reported shifts in improved reflexes, better ability to avoid getting hit, and once they do get hit, improvements or restoration of mental clarity as a result of the LiveO2 process?
Yes, that's something that I have to follow up with them on is the brain health aspect of this. I've been speaking with them about it, but I haven't gotten the feedback in that area yet. But that's something I will start to work on to collect and get back to you in regard to that stuff. Yes.
I think you've probably seen the neurological panel or the brain utilization where
Absolutely.
we use the
Yeah.
adaptive contrast, and the exit energy in the brain was approximately 29% higher. Okay, as a backup to that, I did some neurological panels, touch panels that were all reflex hand-eye coordination, and the results were approximately well, they correlated very well with the brain energy. But the other thing that I think we get into would be the mental clarity. So even regular people, and I'll ask this as a quantitative validation, when we do differential neurological panels, we normally see between 5 and 15% functional improvement in functional real-time neurological performance. Okay, so the numbers we see are, between 5 and 15%. Subjectively, have you, does it look like those numbers are consistent with what you observe in your user population?
Yes, 100% there. I'd say at least that. I wouldn't even be surprised if it was slightly more.
In your athletes as well as your anti-aging, you're observing significant improvements in neurological performance almost across the board for all of your users.
Yeah, 100% true. Yep. Subjectively, because we haven't been able to actually test for it, but yeah, subjectively, no question.
Okay. How about personally? What was your experience?
Yeah, I'm going to ride right when we're done talking. I'm going to go right on the LiveO2. I mean, it's been, I think, a health game changer for me in terms of a multifaceted athletics, sort of this Venn diagram of sports performance on one side and then anti-aging and longevity medicine on the other. And I'm kind of living in that gray shaded area where I still want to compete in sports, but I have an eye on, an increased health span. And for me, I'm convinced that this is one of the tools that, God willing, I'll continue to use for a long time to drive both of those things for me personally. There's no question about that.
Here's an opportunity for quantitative correlation. What we often tell people is that, when you start your LiveO2, training, within a period of time, usually some number of months, you will experience your list of health challenges or your health performance rolling back in time. Okay, so in your personal story, I know you've been using LiveO2 for a while. How many years ago was it that you enjoyed the same performance that you have now? So how many years did LiveO2 roll your personal performance back?
Oh, I love telling this. I turned 55 just a few days ago. The answer to that question is 20 years ago. I feel like I'm my VO2 max, lung capacity, energy, everything that I'm doing is as if I'm 35, without question. And LiveO2 is major part of that. Major part of that. Yep.
Okay, so 20-year rollback on the clock. Okay, that would be physical performance.
Yep.
All right. Can you, if you think about your mental kind of brain performance, etc., is there a number that you would apply to that? So how long ago was it when you felt as bright and as clear as you do now?
Yeah. So that's an interesting one because, and a little harder to answer, and I'll try to explain. Because I'm still learning so much, including, within this space, and the growth potential is still there. I could give a number to roll back, but I actually feel my best now. I actually feel as though I'm learning at a faster rate now than I did, let's say even 10 years ago. So I think as a result of my repeated use with LiveO2, and for me, I also have one at home, by the way. So I have two. I have one at work and one at home. So I'm either using it at home or at work. And it's been I've had the one we purchased at home 5 or 6 years now. So I've been using LiveO2 for 5 or 6 years. I think my ability to learn and mental clarity is the best that it's been now. So I don't even compare it to 10 or 20 years ago, because I think the best is right now, actually. I would just say, like, to people, like, read everything that's in the Oxygen library. Try to find a LiveO2 in your area, and go use it, because I think this is something that is a major, still somewhat hidden gem in the space of longevity and wellness and overall health, and really should be utilized in more gyms, and certainly in places like ours that are more kind of anti-aging, but biohacking. As biohacking continues to sort of evolve and the space continues to grow, this is a piece, like, as far as physical and mental health and anti-aging and wellness and all the buzzwords, that are being used by, the top guys and the top women and top podcasts today. Find a LiveO2 and get started on this health journey. Like, it's a major, major shift in your overall health. There's no question about it.
One of the things people are often confused about is, okay, training with oxygen. So we have some competitors out there that say, oh yeah, just hop on a bike and train with oxygen. And we're like, no, you don't want to do that. And the reason, and here's what we say, the reason you don't want to do that is you're only going to get maybe 20% of the physiological effect. It's a fraction. Okay. So if you would please help put the difference of having the adaptive contrast with a hypoxic oxygen switching process into context, both with training your athletes, but also with training your anti-aging clientele, so that our audience can understand what those differences are from your point of view, working with real people.
Sure. So when we talk about that, I like to use the example of more the Gen Pop and the dementia patients that we have had in. And we do the brain health protocol, and the intermittent hypoxia, he drops down to about 88 and can tolerate 88 for, depending on the day and how he's feeling, for 2, even up. We've been up to as much as 5 minutes at around 88. And then, take him back up to usually comes up to about 98. And so all I can tell you is I don't notice a difference with him here, because I'm not around him that much. But in speaking with his wife, who obviously lives with him, and then speaking with the son at home, they're the ones that are seeing the difference. And that's why they keep coming in. Now, what have they noticed? What they've noticed is that with his progression in dementia, issues of panic and anger, not knowing who his wife was at night, especially at night, it seems as though the dementia gets worse, from what I understand. And he was having these sort of panic attacks, not recognizing his wife, and saying that she didn't belong in the house. That stuff is diminished significantly in their household via the use of the LiveO2. He comes in 3 times a week, and we are up to a total time spent on the LiveO2 of about 30 minutes. And I say it that way because the protocol has shifted a little bit, just because depending on how he comes in on the day and what he can tolerate. So I've sort of been a little bit flexible with how long we've done hypoxia, how long the intervals are, and how many intervals we do. Sometimes we'll only do 2 intervals. Sometimes I'm able to do like 5 intervals. So it depends on how he's feeling.
Oh, here's another question. So you've spent a fair amount of time, perusing LiveO2, our libraries, and the information we represent, because everybody that goes to that library wants to know, is like, well, is this accurate? Because we make some interesting claims on our library.
Sure.
Okay, so as somebody that's come to our library, studied our materials, okay, give me an honest answer, which is, how accurate does the information we put out tend to be with respect to your experience with LiveO2?
Yeah, so accurate, but I want to add this, I want to connect this, Mark, to it. The fact that when I need more information, or have a question and I'm looking for it in the library, sometimes I'm just like, you know what, I'm going to call Annette. The fact that you guys are available to answer questions in conjunction with the library, to me, is what is really the difference maker. And I'll tell you a quick story there. My first experience, I wasn't prepared for this. And I saw you just recently talking about this on another interview. It was my first experience on someone with oxygen. So they're on plus O2 and their oxygen dropped. I hadn't seen that before. And so I wasn't prepared for it. And I'm like, what's going on here? Doesn't make sense to me, but, checked all the equipment and everything's working. The oxygen's flowing and their SpO2 is dropping. So I immediately called up Annette and she started walking me through why this happens. And so again, the fact that is the library accurate? 100%. And then on top of it, the fact that you can, that someone like in our facility, we can just call, or if someone bought this for home, that they can call and get these questions answered. I mean, that's, to me, that's more valuable than anything, really. The access that you guys provide and the knowledge that's there to help us to answer these questions to improve health and sports performance is invaluable.
As we, the world is full of information that you can't trust, and we do our very best to, provide information that people can trust. And a lot of that has to do with the people behind the product, and are they willing and able and knowledgeable enough to actually answer the questions. So, like, for example, this initial dipper pattern, we started running into that, 10 years ago as we, created this generation of technology. And, so people say, wow, why is my, because the first time I saw it, the lady's PO2 dropped to 62%. And I'm like, wow, what's going on? And, she's on oxygen. And so, we've seen this hundreds and hundreds of times. And because, with LiveO2, you're dealing with something that's physiologically profound, and you often see things that, haven't hit the medical books yet. Just like, for example, the walking off oxygen deficit, repaying debt. And so when a person's body gets a copious supply of oxygen, it will end up using it. And so, I'm sorry, I don't mean to disappear into that, but we've seen these things. And when you see them for the first time, it's surprising. It's like, what is going on here? Okay. So with respect to a practitioner, you're working with people every day. Okay. And the fact that there's like this initial dipper pattern where somebody who you think is in good shape, all of a sudden they start exercising on oxygen and their PO2 drops. Okay.
Yeah.
Explain from your perspective on a scale of 1 to 10, how important it is for you to be able to go and not have to figure this stuff out for yourself, to somebody who can actually answer your question.
Yeah. It's invaluable, the information that you guys have in turn, and the support. Again, the support has been phenomenal.
For the audience, so the physiology we're talking about here, again, is because a lot of times people will have, let's assume you've got an injury, okay? And what happens with LiveO2 is that you open up the ability of the body to deliver oxygen to the injured area. So the injured area is hungry. Once you open up the delivery, then what happens, that injury area will gobble oxygen out of the system. And if you're looking at a pulse oximeter, that gobbling of the oxygen out of the system will cause the oxygen in the blood to drop. So in effect, what's happening is you're watching the body pay back a debt or overcome a deficiency, or basically a shortage of oxygen, which shows up when you're looking at a clinical device as a decrease in the apparent oxygen in the blood. And that's actually true. The oxygen in the blood is reduced because the body's using it. Okay. And that's, that only occurs in this kind of situation. So anyway, hopefully that'll help somebody understand what's going on.
And so, ironically, after that first time that I saw that, as we got more people into LiveO2. I wouldn't say that it's a regular occurrence. That would not be accurate, but I've seen it more than once at this point. So, yeah.
Well, a fun experiment for you to try is, have you used the dual pulse oximeters yet? One on the left and one on the right?
Yes, and that did have me do that. Yes, with 2 different readings.
Right. Well, I see you see the differential oximetry. And
Yep,
so what's happening there, and that lets you see this deficit payback effect in real time, because the low side is using more oxygen than the high side.
yep.
Okay, and that
Pretty
lets you get a
fascinating.
feel for it. So as a training algorithm, you
It
might want
sure
to
is.
try that and just watch what's happening, because you can
Yeah.
tell, like whether it's an athlete or somebody that's got a recovery agenda, you can at least do a left to right isolation of where what tissue is consuming more oxygen than the rest.
So I'd say by the third ride, again, ride, I'm referring to the bike, the third use of the LiveO2, that was gone. It was no longer a thing. So the area of inflammation or injury that was soaking up that oxygen, taking it out of the system, or that blockage in those microcapillaries was gone by the third use. It was like it was normal. So cleared it up pretty quick too.
Yeah, the language we use to describe that would be, symmetric oximetry, meaning that the left and the right move together, which means that,
Yeah.
by the time you've reached the, second or third ride, or, the second or third experience, you've turned around and you've reestablished oxygen delivery to the body. And so, again, you only see that in new users, and depending on how
Yes.
aggressive they end up being in the first trainings. So if we're training somebody who's fundamentally athletic, usually that will resolve in the first 5 or so minutes, maybe 10. But, that restoration of oximetry symmetry is I'll call it an indicator that it's safe, or, may be appropriate to consider to move to a little bit more aggressive exertion strategy, depending on the person you're working with. However, if you're working on somebody who's severely health challenged, that, difference in left and right can say, okay, well, we're not ready to go to the next level, because we're still paying, we're in this debt payback pattern, and your body's in the process of catching up. Okay, so with respect to LiveO2, all of these things are, new with respect, and somebody who's, even if you're medically trained, you're not used to seeing these kinds of phenomena
That's right.
occur.
Exactly.
And so getting to the point where you understand what you're seeing and can interpret that as, okay, as move ahead, hold up, or maybe back off in terms of your training strategy, is very useful knowledge, because if you don't
Yeah,
have it,
absolutely.
you're out there in the Wild West.
Yeah, 100%.